Okay. So can I welcome you all to this virtual meeting of the licensing panel. Present at the meeting are members of the panel. So can I refer sort of members and officers to the published protocol for holding virtual meetings? Can I ask first that we introduce ourselves before we progress? So I'm Councillor Angela Murphy-Strawn and I am the chair for this evening. Councillor Henson?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Maxine Henson.
Thank you. And Councillor Rabadia?
I'm Councillor Kanti Rabadia.
Mr. Wagalia?
Hi, I'm Ashwa Gala. I'm the licensing officer for Harrow Council this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Mr. Anthony?
Yes, Anthony Biniyesu, the legal advisor to the panel for this hearing.
Thank you. We also have present Mr. Panchal. Mr. Panchal, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Mr. Surendra Panchal. I'm the representative for Mr. Sukhjit Rajwansi, the applicant.
Thank you. So I'd like now to refer.
Sorry, Chair. Mr. Panchal also has the applicant with him. If he wants to introduce himself as well, please.
Yes, I'm sorry, Chairman. Thanks, Ash. I've got the applicant here present with me. If there was any questions to be asked, the applicant could come forward, and but I'll ask him to come and show himself up to say that he is here with me to confirm with the committee. That's Mr. Sukhjit Singh.
Hi, I'm Sukhjit Rajwansi. Applicant is apply for the license.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes,
can
Councillor.
I? Sorry to just sort of interrupt. Could we have clarification, because I think just looking at the application, it says, are you an acting agent? It says full name Manpreet Kapoor as agent capacity. The other thing I've noticed is this application is for the Borough of Ealing. So is this the correct application? It says
right. I think we'll ask the licensing officer for that clarification. But my understanding in the information provided, Councillor Rabadia, it indicates that there is another licence relating to Ealing, so it's not specific to this one. So if I can go ahead and sort of do the initial housekeeping things, then we'll have an opportunity to clarify and ask questions. But I think we need to get started first. And before I go any further, I do apologise for those of you who were kept waiting. We were scheduled to start at 6:30, so apologies for that. So in terms of the protocol for this meeting, if I can ask the panel to note that the Licensing Act and Gambling Act panel meetings have particular rules about participation based on the legislation, and or legal advisor will be able to advise us on those rules. Can the panel please also note the following? Members of the committee should ensure that they have their videos on at all times. Please put your microphones on mute, unless of course you're speaking. Other members and participants should switch off their videos and put microphones on mute until you are invited to speak. If there is a technical problem, we may well have to adjourn until that issue is resolved. We are quorate. We will require 3 councillors for the meeting to go ahead, so we are quorate. And just to inform you that the meeting is being audio and video recorded and will be available to watch and listen to on the website. Can I ask that if you want to speak or you want to make a contribution, you raise your hand using the raise hand function in the toolbar. Can I ask if there are any interest to declare? Are there any declarations of interest for members of the committee? I have none to declare. None. The point about the minutes is that the minutes are agreed by the panel after they sit, because the composition of the licensing panel changes. Just to outline the procedure that will be followed as set out on pages 5 and 6 of the agenda. There will be an invitation for the applicant to present his or her case, to speak, for the panel and objectors to ask questions of the applicant. The second part is for the objectors to present their case, to speak, and similarly the applicant and the panel can ask questions of the objectors. At the end, nearing the end of the hearing, each side will be asked to make a concluding statement. We start with the objectors, then the applicant, and then the panel will withdraw with the legal officers to decide what conclusion to come to, and then we will make a decision. The decision will be notified within 5 working days in writing. I need to bring your attention to the fact that a number of people have made representations, and one is B&M Lemberger, 2 is Jonathan Gordon, 3 is Jeffrey Diane, 4 is Elaine Kay, 5 is Ken Schreiber, and 6 is Stuart Sandler. Okay, so introductions we have done. So we move on now to presentation of the report by the licensing officer.
Thank you, Chair. Okay. An application for a new premises licence has been received for Cannons Food and Wine, 7 Cannons Corner, Edgware, Middlesex, HA8 8AE. The only licensable activity is for the sale of alcohol. The timing schedule appears on point 2 on page 4 of the agenda papers. Representations have been received from 6 members of the public. The representations express concerns about the possible undermining of one or more of the licensing objectives should the license be granted. Just a very quick note about conditions here. Some of the representations go into conditions, so they want conditions applied to the license if the application is granted. Other conditions have already been agreed with the applicant and the police, but it is up to the panel to either accept those conditions, to modify them, to refuse them, or do as they wish. I thought I'd just make a note of that. That concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Galia.
Just to, sorry, if I can just add to that, just to confirm Councillor Abadia's concerns from before, Mr. Penchal is the owner of Personal Licence Courses Limited, and that's the agent that's actually made this application. Manpreet Singh Kapoor works for Mr. Penchal, and he's the manager in that company. The issue about maybe Mr. Penchal can cut in here, the issue about the license being from Ealing, the applicant, in order to sell alcohol, needs a personal license. And that personal license, am I correct in saying, has been issued by Ealing? Mr. Penchal, can you confirm that? Sorry, you're on mute, sir.
Okay, sorry. Yes, Ash, I agree with you. The personal license has been granted by the London Borough of Ealing. It's a norm for anybody to be granted a personal license on where he resides, he or she resides. So Mr. Sukhmit Rajwansi resides in the Ealing Borough, so his personal license will be granted by the London Borough of Ealing.
Thank you. The actual premises is 7 Cannons Corner, which is within the London Borough of Harrow, and that basically means that although the applicant might reside in Ealing, he can still be a DPS within Harrow and also be a licensee within Harrow. I hope that clarifies your question, Councillor.
One further clarification on that. He had the personal licence which was issued in the London Borough of Ealing. Does he have premises in the London Borough of Ealing to which that licence relate?
Sorry, ma'am, I can clarify because I can clarify in detail if Ash would like me to do that. Anybody in the country can be issued with a personal license from he or she where he resides. So anybody over the age of 18 can apply for a personal license in the borough that he or she resides, but can trade anywhere in the country in England and Wales. So in other words, if somebody was issued with a personal license in the Harrow Council, he could own a shop in Westminster Council or in Ealing Borough or in Harrow Borough or anywhere else. It does not stop him or her becoming a DPS or an owner of the shop in any other borough in England and Wales, if that clarifies what I'm saying.
I think what the councillor is asking is, is the applicant a licensee for a premises in Ealing under the Licensing Act 2003?
No, the applicant does not own or have any shop in the London Borough of Ealing.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Chair. May I just sort of yes. In terms of the application, and we just need some guidance on this, Officer Ash, because the application is in the name of an individual and there's a premises there. So I'm just trying to distinguish now. And so is the applicant trading as himself, is another trading company? So what's the connection? Because there's a premises, there's an individual, and there's a limited company. So how does the license stick or work in terms of the triangle here?
The applicant himself can apply as an individual person. In this case, that's what he has done. Mm-hmm. It's irrelevant if the applicant is a director of a company in this case, as he's applied for as an individual. So some applicants will apply as a limited company, and the directors will have responsibility for that company, but the licensee will be the company. So, for example, if that company is sold to somebody else, the license actually stays with that company. Sure. In this case, it is the individual that has applied for the license. So that individual will have sole responsibility for the license if this application is granted. It won't be his company, it will be himself.
All right, thank you. Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. If I can move on now to ask the applicant to present their statement.
Thank you very much, Chair. Couple of things before I put my presentation. It may take a little bit time because I've got 6 objectors on it, so I do apologize if I have taken a little bit more time than you expect, but I'm going to go in very detail because there are objectors who have put some detailed applications on this applicant. So I'd like to first of all stress to you and just clarify a lot of things that we've just discussed, and Councillor Rabadia has brought to attention about the limited company. But let me go through. Mr. Rajwansi has got a personal license. That personal license entitles him to trade anywhere in England and Wales. In other words, he could apply for a premises license in any borough in England and Wales. It is not a far distance from where he lives in Ealing to come to Harrow Council, where he's applied for a shop license. It could have been objected by the Chief Officer of Police if that application was quite further away, and Mr. Rajwansi wouldn't be able to travel to the work of business in 7 days a week to look after that business, because the job for a DPS, designated premises supervisor, is on a day-to-day running of the shop. And in this case, he's quite near and able to travel to and from work from Illingborough to Harrow. So it's not a difficult task. He does have a lot of experience. That's what that is what about this application is. He has tremendous experience. He's been involved into a family business with in Wolverhampton. The family had a shop in Wolverhampton from 2017 to 2020, still today. They own that shop, and they recently just sold it off. Sorry, beg your pardon. Then they moved on. They also have a shop in Camberley, which is in the GU 17 ONW into Bell Lane, which is called Gemco. They acquired that in June 2020. Again, it's a family business. Mr. Rajwansi is not a DPS there. Mr. Rajwansi's parents own the business. So he has tremendous experience in running off licenses in the area. He does understand the 4 licensing objectives. If you would like to ask him any question on 4 licensing objectives, he is willing to answer any of those. Well, the other thing that I'm going to bring to your consideration is looking at the guidance section 182, 2.1 to 2.10, whereby he needs to understand the 4 licensing objectives mentioned in 2.1 to 2.10 in the guidance, which he does understand. He also does understand the 2.15 to 2.32, which is again the public nuisance and children from harm. He does understand that very well. I'm also going to stress on 9.43, the authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives and proportionate to what it is intended to achieve. And in this case, he does understand the 4 licensing objectives so well that he will make sure that the license objectives are robustly promoted. In doing so, there was a proposed conditions laid out by the police. If you look at into your bundle on page 59 of your bundle, which indicates what conditions that were agreed upon with the responsible authorities. I'd also like to bring to your attention that there aren't any responsible authority who have now objected to this application. The responsible authorities have more reports on any of the criminal activities or any of that sorts that would happen, any nuisance and that. So there wasn't any there, or there wasn't any reports to be carried out. So there are no reports there. I understand, looking at the 6 applicants who 6 objectors who have put their objections in. Majority of the objectors, if you were to look at very carefully, and if you look at the guidance, and they're more to do with guidance section 14.19. The section guidance 14.19 clearly says there can be confusion about the difference between the need for premises and the cumulative impact. This isn't in a cumulative impact zone, so I'd like to bring to your attention it is not in a cumulative impact zone. Or premises on the licensing objectives. For example, on crime and disorder, need concerns the commercial demand for another pub or restaurant or hotel and is a matter for the planning authority. So it is not matter for this committee. This is not a matter for a licensing authority on discharging the licensing functions or for its statement of the license, of the licensing policy. So there is a need that is being put up by some of the applicants here to say that we should not have another off license in this area. So that is not for this committee to look at that. So that concerns are put aside today, and we are not going to be looking at that. I'm sure you do understand, and your legal would definitely understand what I'm saying. The other thing is about the training. I've said to you earlier, looking back at the sections of guidance 2.1 to 2.32, in saying whether the licensing objectives are going to be thoroughly promoted, which they are. We are going to have a training manual at the premises. Mr. Raghuvanshi is trained and does have a personal license with him. And that personal license contains all the training licensing objectives which he understands. I can show you a training manual which is going to be, which looks at, and it will record all the trainings carried out to the staff he employs. On the first day of the staff's employment, all the trainings will be carried out. There will be also all the recording of the people coming into to have a right to work. Documents will be logged in to make sure they have a right to work, which is a major issue in this country at the moment. We will also be making sure there's a Challenge 25 followed. So posters will be put up for Challenge 25 to make sure that Challenge 25 policy is in place. We'll also be making sure the operating schedule is put up at the premises. We'll be making sure there will be signs saying that there's CCTV. We'll be also putting down signs, which is again a concern of one of the objectors in saying we will please leave quietly, consider our neighbors. So a nuisance condition will be taken care of. The client's going to have a refusal book at the premises, which is required by law. He shall have the incident book, which is going to be present to record all the incidents which is going to take place if they are at any time. He will also record and make sure the CCTV is recording for 31 days, which is again part of the condition laid out by the police. And as you are aware, and I'm sure your legal department will explain this to you, under section guidance 136, if any of the conditions are breached, he will be coming in front of you, which we do not want to come in front of you, and you will then have a right to revoke his license. So none of the conditions, as he's worked before in his family's businesses from 2017, he has, or the family has not breached any of the licensing conditions, which is a good news. I have looked at the objector Godfrey Dyan, which looks in your, if you look at page guide, your bundle page 53 onwards and page 55 onwards, and I've looked at very carefully on all today's, and there are certain elements there that do not concern this application. For instance, you heard Mr. Ravadia asking that about the limited company and the triangle. In this case, as Mr. Waghela has just explained to you, it isn't an application with a limited company. Yes, Mr. Raghuvanshi is the director at one of the companies, but that company used to belong when we had a shop at Camberley in Wolverhampton, and he's remained a director there. And if he applies for a license on his own name, he can trade at the premises if he wants to, on a limited company. No law stops him from doing that, because again, he's the director of the company. If that company was to be active, at the moment, it is not going to be done in that way. The second of the objector's second view on page 56, if you go to your bundle on page 56, and there's a concern, his concern is regarding the parking. Yes, we would like to cooperate with him in all the senses. My client wants to cooperate with all the objectors here and to make sure that we are not trying to breach anything or not trying to bring any harm to them in running our shop. All we are trying to do is give them an advantage that they can come and then we serve to them in a better manner. The parking matter is not for this committee to look at, and my client is very much aware that he will not be able to park his car on a double yellow line, which he will be breaching. So it does not concern, although he's mentioned that. The deliveries, yes, we are concerned about his on page 56 at the bottom. If you see, delivery companies to be advised by the licensor not to double park in front of fine, license to be reviewed on an annual basis. The license cannot be renewed on the annual basis. The license will be reviewed on regular basis rather than annual basis, because we have enforcement officers visiting him every often, so it will be reviewed anyway. But he's concerned about the deliveries coming during the night. There will be no deliveries coming during the night, and there will be no deliveries being done. But if the committee wishes to put up a condition which says that deliveries will only be taken between 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the evening, we're very happy to have that condition added to the police's extra conditions. We're very glad to have that added into our thing. But let me remind you that this is not a pub, or this is not a restaurant, where if you look at his on page 57, he's asking for a soundproofing to prevent noise from the shop disturbing the residents. We are not playing music in the off license. We are not allowed to play music. There is no music license applied for. So there will be no music played. So just to make you understand. And also, we're not a pub that we're going to be smashing bottles in the night to throw in the bins. So we'd like you to make sure that such things are not going to be taking place at the premises. So we've looked at all the concerns. The CCTV is there. We have agreed with the police. If you look at on page 59, and majority of the concerns have been looked into and will be looked into. So, ma'am, I've put in a lot of matter to you that how we're going to be trading and how my client is going to be trading. And under the section guidance 10.15, I want to bring it to you, which also states shops, stores, and supermarkets should normally be free to provide sales of alcohol for consumption of the premises any times when the retail outlet is open for shopping, unless there are good reasons based on the licensing objectives for restricting those hours. And hence, I've proved to you that there are not good objections here at the moment. We've considered and we've looked into all the conditions and all the matters of promoting the 4 licensing objectives robustly. All the staff are going to be fully trained. Matters are going to be taken into place. We want these people who have objected to come and utilize the shop, and we want to make sure that we serve them in a manner that is required by the law. So, ma'am, we feel that this license be granted today with the conditions added on page 59 by the police. If there are any questions, I'm very happy to answer any questions that you wish to ask me, ma'am.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Panchal. We don't appear to have any of the objectors present, so I'm going to ask the panel whether or not you've got any questions for Mr. Panchal. And I will start by asking for clarification regarding the DPS. Is your applicant a DPS for any other premises?
Ma'am, he's not a DPS for any other premises at the moment.
Thank you for that. Another issue that was raised by one of the objectors is the drinking and the discarding, the disposal of alcohol cans and bottles in the surrounding areas, outside the premises and in the entranceway to the flats above the shop. Now, in terms of antisocial behaviour, we all want to reduce antisocial behaviour. Yes. And what proposition would your client have for dealing with empty cans and bottles discarded by ad hoc drinkers in and around the premises?
There's certain thing that I'd like to bring to your attention. Number one is the street drinkers. I have clearly trained my staff here, because we are also a training company. and we've made it very clear that if they find any street drinkers, they will not be serving them, number one. Number two, if they manage to get the alcohol and they were drinking and throwing the cans out, we will make sure, my client is going to make sure that the shop front is kept clear and during the daytime and during the evening before they leave and when they come in the morning to open the shop. There are also bins. If you look at your bundle page 34, you will see a backside of the premises in the yard, and there are 2 bins there. If you look at up on the drawing, there are 2 bins. So there are bins going to be provided, and those bins are going to be utilized by my client. He's going to make sure if there are cans there to be thrown into those bins or taken away and thrown in the bins. But this is an off license, ma'am. So I just want to make it very clear that the alcohol is going to be sold in sealed containers by law.
Absolutely, I understand that, but we do have an epidemic of drinking on the streets, and of course, what tends to happen is that where bins are not provided, and I am aware that there is a bin near the bus stop, but that is quite often overfilled. So if a bin is full, then people are likely to discard their cans and bottles on the ground around them. I'm glad to hear that you've got a bin outside the back of the premises. You mentioned that the shop front is going to be kept clear. Just getting down to the nitty-gritty of that, how is that going to be done? What is going to be done?
Ma'am, there is going to be a bin also in the front. So we're going to bring a bin in the front of the shop. And you could see on page 33, if you look at the shop, there's a door, and on the side there is a small CCTV kept there, and there'll be a bin also there. And my client, as I said to you earlier, is going to make sure at the opening time when he comes in the morning to make sure the place is clear and the cans are thrown into the bin if they are left there, and going to make sure every now and then somebody is going to come out of the shop to have a look and see if there are bins around to be played in. But our advice to any street drinkers would be, we will not serve you any alcohol if you are going to be throwing bins or are going to drink around the area, because we do not want that culture of street drinkers. That's what our aim is. I can give you a very, very good example of my client running the shop in Wolverhampton, which was one of the areas, a crime area, where my client improved the area so much that even the police came back to them and said, well done. So that's what he's going to be implying again at Harrow Council here, to make sure that the council comes back and says, well done, Mr. Singh. That's what we are aiming to achieve.
Thank you. It's good to hear that an additional bin is going to be provided, and that your client will be clearing the area on a daily basis. There was applicants made reference to the fact that there has been criminal disturbances around the area. They mentioned a gun, they mentioned violence, physical violence, and they made another point. Now, is there any indication of the time period within which that happened? Was it very distant? Was it very recent? Because what I could not deduce is when all of that happened around the area.
If you look at that incident that you're talking about in the vicinity, that happened quite a while ago, when my client wasn't the owner of the shop, and I don't know which page you are mentioning, but I vaguely read that it was quite a while ago. Ma'am, if you can bring that to my notice, or if Ash can bring to my notice where it was, which the applicant had put down.
The additional bundle, supplemental information, I think it was.
Was it on the supplementary information? Yes. But ma'am, that supplementary, I'm looking at the supplementary information that was sent in today. It was a reference document to the police reports about recent antisocial and violent crimes around Kennel. The same show when it was run as an off license by Unwins, when after a gun attack forced, I think that was very while ago. And there are no reports after that, and hence that is one of the reasons that the police haven't put the report. I'm sure if we were sitting here today, and if that was a huge concern, then the police would have put the report in and would have objected to this application. But you can see the police have not objected to this application because that was a one-off incident which happened when Unwinds were running the shop.
Okay, thank you for that. I wanted some clarification as to the timeline when all of those events occurred. One of the objectors raised the concern that there may be drinking in the alleyway behind the shop, causing a disturbance. I noticed that sort of CCTV cameras have been sort of strategically placed throughout the shop and at the front. I'm not quite sure what the arrangements are in terms of covering the back of the property.
Ma'am, we're quite happy if you intend to put that condition in that we would put a camera up there to help both the police and us in tackling that problem if there is one. But we are happy to put an extra camera up there to make sure such an incident does not occur. And if it does, we will help the responsible authority in making sure this incident is cleared.
Right, thank you. Thank you for that. Members of the panel, councillors, any further questions for Mr. Panchal? No.
Chair, my hand's up, if you know.
Right, yes, Councillor Rabadia.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Surendra, if I may just sort of ask a few clarification points, so mostly about what you mentioned today, yeah? One thing I just wanted to understand was you mentioned something about this is not a cumulative zone, but my understanding was that there are similar shops nearby, so there is a cumulative effect. So what did you mean by that? If you could please help clarify.
Yeah, when I say there's no cumulative impact, is councils when I think Ash will be able to tell you that he's raised his hand up if he wants to clarify that. Normally, the council in their licensing policy would mention areas where there are cumulative impact zones. So they would say that this is a cumulative impact zone and there is a troublesome here. So if anybody applies for a license, it will be discussed at the committee and we will have to prove to the committee how well the premises would be run to stop the cumulative impact happening. And in this instance, this place is not on a cumulative impact zone. So that is one of the reasons that I mentioned about the cumulative impact.
Okay. So that's clear. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
Okay. You also mentioned that there's a big issue about right to work in this country. It's a major issue. So I'm not sure why you mentioned that and what's the connection to the application. Do you mind elaborating on that, please?
Yes. When I mentioned that is what I'm trying to make you understand is there are a lot of people who have got no right to work in this country, and they tend to come up with false documents and they come and get an employment in off licenses and that. Majority of some of the off licenses get caught up. We have a lot of hearings regarding this and they tend to lose their license if people who have no right to work are employed. To make sure that doesn't happen, we are now making sure that training manuals are available, and in training manuals, right to work documents are taken in and clarified with the immigration department if they are not very sure. But those documents are photocopied and put in for the police or the immigration to come and have a look. So those documents are already in the training manual, I think Ash would be able to introduce you to more, but I can show you what
Mr. Surendra, sorry, rather than just sort of waste time on something that I wasn't intending to kind of get the meaning out of. It's your responsibility, not the officers, to demonstrate this, because I don't understand why that will be part of your training manual. Your training manual is for your staff. Now, application vetting and processes is the responsibility of the directors of the company. So I'm just failing to understand your point here, because that is something the director has to make sure before anyone starts employment. It's nothing to do with the training manual. So I'm not getting any certainty on that. Do you mind clarifying a bit? Because it's nothing to do with the training manual, that process, in my opinion.
Well, in our training opinion, sorry, I'm not trying to cut you down, but
No, sure. No,
right to work checklist is part of the training manual.
right.
That is laid out by the government. So it's a part of the right to work checklist. So we have a right to work checklist as part of the training manual to make sure documents, although it's it's concern of the DPS,
Right.
and the managing director of the company, to make sure that the documents are checked correctly. Sometimes there are fake documents, but if they are checked and put into there, it helps the employer to make sure that yes, documents were checked.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
So that's not the major part of this application anyway, but I just mentioned because you mentioned it. I've got a few more questions, Chair. If Councillor Hanson doesn't have any, may I continue?
Yes. Mr. Wagalia, did you need to come in before Councillor Rabadia continues?
I'm quite happy for Councillor Rabadia to finish, and then I've got a couple of questions after that, if that's okay.
Councillor Rabadia.
Thank you, everyone. In terms of the CCTV, I know this is a standard sort of point that you need to have it available for 31 days. I would also like sort of to go further on this in terms of yes, you'll have 31 days a physical recording device on your premises. What is your backup policy? Because I think I would like to see some kind of assurance on that, as well as maybe a requirement as part of the conditions. I don't know. Do you have any idea of what the backup of this CCTV is going to be?
The simple backup at the moment is, I think the recording is done on a mobile also. So so most of the time the recording is also in the shop, as well as the owners have got direct access of that recording on their mobile phones. So the recording keeps continuing on the mobile phone.
Is that correct, or is that just available to view, or is it also recording remotely somewhere else?
Yeah. I'm going to ask the client because he thinks he can answer your question. So I like.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, and access from
Yes, hi there. So the DVR has access. So if in 31 days it can record itself. And if we want, we can back up onto another CD or a DVD and keep it on file for about 3 months, if you would say so. Or we can keep it as a backup on our phone on our iCloud. Because basically, you can, if you want, you can back up the DVR as well. So with the 31 days recording every month, you can keep it on a disk or
on the iCloud.
Or on the iCloud, yeah, or a hard drive.
Right. Okay. Can I just sort of seek some clarification on that? So the CCTV recordings can be kept for an indefinite period of time, because one of the objectors referred to the fact that they would like to see CCTV footage kept for 52 days. Is that a possibility? Because if you can save it on a DVD or a CD, what kind of time limits would you be looking to keep that footage for?
Ma'am, from my experience and my point of view on licensing for so many years, the requirement by the guidance section 182, I don't know if Anthony can clarify on that. I'm sure Anthony would be able to clarify that. I think the guidance says that the CCTV should be laid for 31 days, recording 31 days. So it changes after every 31 days. And it is very difficult at many premises that I've come across, whereby responsible authorities, if it crossed 31 days, would not be able to get the CCTV because it has crossed 31 days. And it's so my personal view is the CCTV is normally 31 days recording, and it has 31 days recording there. But my client, it's something new that I've heard today from my client, that he's happy to put the recording onto an iCloud where it is there for 3 months, which is an extremely brilliant thing that we are hearing today. But I'd like to stress on that, and that will give us everybody a good picture, and for me to learn about that. If Anthony could stress on the CCTV.
It is helpful.
It's helpful, yes.
If your client were able to keep that footage beyond the statutory 31 days.
That's what the client is saying, he's going to do that. But
do we have an assurance from him that he will be doing that?
Yeah, he's saying he's giving an assurance that he's going to put it on the cloud. Yeah. They will be there for 3 months.
So Chair, sorry, if I may.
Sorry, back to you, Councillor.
Yes, sorry. So we don't lose the essence of what I was trying to say. So, you know, having in 31 days or 91 and 90 days, I think is good. It's 90 days, but in terms of compliance, my suggestion or my reason for asking this question is that I think just to make sure there's no problem with the physical equipment, that sometimes it breaks down and then they say, oh, CCTV wasn't working when incident happened. What we are saying is if that wasn't working, there's a backup available somewhere. So the key question here was about what is your backup. So if that is clarified, then I think that's we've understood the backup system, that not only is it on the equipment that's recording, but there's a remote backup somewhere. So which was the essential point, which I think seems to be the case, that they will be doing that as well, which is great. Okay. So,
right. Okay. And I think also there was mention of the quality of the CCTV recordings and so on in the conditions set out by the police.
Yeah.
Okay. Any further questions, Councillor?
I do. Yes, if I may continue. Yes, sorry. Yeah. In terms of the personal participation, so yeah, I don't think it's a big issue that, you know, where the license holder stays. I think it's just kind of understanding, because you said he's got multiple premises, got multiple businesses, and so on and so forth. So this seems like another sort of addition to their feather in terms of the business empire, which is great. So it's just a matter of then the sort of active supervision, participation, and control, sort of, you know, how it's going to be achieved without any sort of compromise on the conditions, and also sort of some kind of indication that yes, he can't be there all the time, and we accept that, and you know, it's a reality of life. So what else is there sort of gives us sort of you know, comfort to say he's not going to be there always, but somebody, you know, what is that sort of extra layer which we can bank on to say those breaches that the objectors are objecting to are unlikely to happen, because it's a combined effort of everyone in that team. So after him, what happens when he's not there most of the time?
I've just explained to you in Licensing Act, a DPS has a day-to-day running. A DPS under Section 57 of the notice can nominate somebody to become his assistant or become his assistant. A DPS can become a DPS of 100 places as long as he can reach anywhere. This is the law I'm stating from what I know. And in this case, and in everybody's case, we always advise, and they always have to do that, is train their staff. In other words, train the staff. That is why the training manual is there. So before he employs anybody, he goes through the whole thorough training of 4 licensing objectives and how the premises is going to run, and all that is going to be done during that process. And then he nominates that person, because a DPS can only do 1 shift. I agree with what you're saying, that yes, what is the guarantee that he's going to do? So he's going to train that staff, and that staff will be nominated under Section 57 to be his DPS when he's not there, or he's gone on a holiday. So there will be a trained 2 or 3 staff who will be on the training manual, and they will be trained every 3 months. So there will be a training schedule, and the training will be done every 3 months, like we see at Sainsbury's or Tesco's or Asda's, and this will happen same with the small shops. So there will be a training manual at the shop, the training manual can be inspected by the responsible authorities to see if those trainings are carried out on a regular basis. If they weren't, under section 136, they will be prosecuted. So there is an assurance here that every staff that is present is fully trained in the 4 licensing objectives.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mr. Panchal. Mr. Wagalia.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things that has got me thinking about some conditions. Councillor Abadia has touched on training, DPS being available at all, being available at the premises, etc. Conditions. Would you accept the condition that I understand what you said about the training, Mr. Panchal, and the training should be refreshed every 3 months for employees who are working at the shop? Have I got that right?
That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Would you accept the condition where a personal license holder will be present at the premises at all times whilst licensable activities are carried out at the premises?
My client is listening to that, Ash, and majority of the time, yes, a lot of councils put that condition in. It's very, very difficult at times, because what tend to happen is, why we are saying it's under the training manual. We're happy to, if the committee decides to put that condition, we're happy to have it. But having said that, I'd like the committee to consider on the other side of the way, because it's going to incur financial penalty to the client, because every time a staff comes in, he's trained, and if his license is applied for, which the company has to pay for, yes. And as soon as he receives that license, he will be grabbed by any other person or competitor or whatever, and he goes off. Then as another license holder, you bring it in to train. So there is a conflict there of when it comes to financial implications to the client. But if the committee wishes to have that condition on, we will have to have no objection to that, ma'am.
Thank you. The other condition that I was thinking about, because Councillor Murphy-Strachan touched on street drinking and antisocial behaviour. Would your client accept the condition where no single cans of beer or lager will be sold?
Yes.
Yeah, the clients already noted and said yes. So Ash, yes, we are happy to have that. Okay, and would he also accept the condition where no high strength beers or lagers will be sold above 6% ABV? We've already mentioned in our operating schedule, Ash, if they are happy with that, it is 6.5% alcohol that we mentioned. I think let me just have a look at that. Manpreet's mentioned in the application in the operating schedule. Right. I think it's 6.5 that we are agreeing, which is very reasonable, because no high strength alcohol will be sold above 6.5. I think it doesn't look there, but we are happy to have 6.5, Ash, if you're happy with that. Okay. That's a norm that all councils are now sticking to. So right. Ross Ealing, Hounslow, which we normally work around, and the high strength alcohol is come to 6.5, which covers majority of the alcohol below the strength of a high volume. That's great. I'll leave that up to the councillors to make a decision on the acceptance of those conditions or not. Thank you, Chair. That concludes my questions.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Wagalia. Right. So once again, we do.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair, but I have been waiting since 6:15 to be recognised, and the technology has only just connected me. We've been watching the panel meeting since the start, and it's only because of one of the council members picked up a message from us that I'm now appearing. My name is Godfrey Diane, and I need to accept the request from the panel to make the representations that we've already suggested. I'm sorry to come in so late, and I'm certainly apologise for being so late. It's not something I would normally do.
Okay.
But this technology has not been hot bread, I'm afraid. It's been a disaster for us. And I know there are plenty of people out there who want some of these points to be raised, particularly against the gentleman representing the applicant.
Thank you.
Have we got any time left?
Right, you do, right. Yeah, I'm sorry that you weren't here at the start. So where we are in terms of the proceedings, Mr. Diane, is that the applicant has presented their case. Members of the panel, myself and the other councillors, have been asking questions of Mr. Panchal and raising some of the issues that you have raised as objectors. So we are at the point now whereby objectors can ask questions of the applicant, and then I will ask the yourself as an objector to present your case.
Thank you. There's a lot of work's gone into being prepared for this, and I would appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So, are there any questions yet that you'd like to ask of the applicant?
I would like to address them directly to the applicant, if I may, but we did actually pick up some earlier messages or
right.
Earlier part of what the representative for Mr. Rajwansi was saying, and I just want to deal with those first.
Right, you are going to get an opportunity to present your case. As the applicant has presented their case, is there anything that you would like to ask them? Or perhaps we can come back to that a little bit later on, considering you've just joined us. Would you like to present your case now?
I'll just address the gentleman representing Mr. Rajwansi. You're the gentleman acting for Mr. Kapoor, aren't you? What is your name?
Mr. Panchal.
Sorry, it's Mr. Panchal here.
Panchal.
I'm sorry, signal was breaking up. Mr. Panchal, just one question arising from what you said a bit earlier, that Mr. Rajwansi, do I pronounce his name right, by the way, the applicant?
Yeah, Rajwansi, that's correct, yeah.
Rajwansi. You said that he had plenty of experience because connection with his family for the last 4 years or so. Can you tell us where these off licenses were and what he was doing, please?
Ma'am, we did mention where these off licenses were, but I'll mention it again. The off license were, one of them was at Wolverhampton that I mentioned earlier in my presentation, 330 Glentworth Gardens, WV6 which was from 2017 to 2020. And the other one is still running, the Gemco license in Kimberley, GU170NW2 Bell Lane.
Thank you. So in other words, he was operating effectively as a TPS at those off licenses.
I made it very clear in my presentation. He wasn't being a DPS and he's not been a DPS of any of the premises.
Oh, that's all I need to know. That's the only thing, Chair, I need to know from what Mr. Panchal was saying. Can I now talk directly to the applicant, if possible?
Right. So you can present your case now as objectors for everyone.
Corner is extremely quiet at night, and the retail units there are all closing at 8 o'clock, and this also all follows the unpleasant situation were there when there was a gun attack, when there had been and an occupier of a local.
The signal is not very good.
I am struggling to hear you, Mr. Diane. I think you've got a problem with your signal. Yeah. I think the panel is also struggling to hear you, Mr. Dine.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to move to a different location, if you bear with me.
Yes.
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 Hold on, please. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Right. This is virtual meetings on the move. Now I know what they mean by a mobile phone. Right, can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
that sounds better.
I'm sorry about that, Chair, I really am. It's been an evening of surprises.
That's all right, take your time.
Excellent. So we were talking about the fact that the premises are located in an unfortunate area of Stanmore where there have been violent attacks, antisocial activity, and even a murder in the road directly opposite. In other words, this location is unusual and perhaps different to what it was that the applicant has been dealing with so far. I would like now to mention that one of the items on the Harrow Council list of items for an application should be that they should have confidence in whoever manages an off-licence, again, as a DPS. So if Mr. Sarkit Singh Rajwanski is available, may he please come into the line of the camera, please. Good evening.
Yes.
I think, can we swap places, please, with your advisor so we can see you clearer? Good evening. I don't know how much time I've got, the chair hasn't said, and I don't want to overrun the time. Chair, can you tell me how much time I may have to ask the gentleman some questions now?
What we would like you to do, we give you time to present your case, and if the time is extensive, we haven't placed a limit on it just yet. But if it's, you know, if it's coming across as extensive, then I will let you know.
Thank you so much. In that case, I'm going to go straight in with some quick-fire questions for the applicant, if I may, because I think it would be unfair to the rest of you to hold you online because of a technical hitch in the past. So let's get straight into it, if we may.
Okay.
You've been very busy, Mr. Rajwanski. Sorry, I am pronouncing your name right, aren't I?
Yeah, you're right.
How old are you, please?
20.
You're 20. And when you got the application for the personal license, how old would you have been, please?
For the personal license, I was 19.
Very good. The question I need to ask you is, are you in any way connected with a company that has the same name as the one you are trading as? There is a company called Cannon's Corner Food and Wine Limited. Do you want to trade as Cannon's Corner Food and Wine?
Yeah, that's the leaseholding company of ours.
It's a what, sorry?
That's the leaseholder of the shop. We've taken the lease of the company. So
you'll be trading as that name, because there's another company as well that is using.
That's another going to hold the lease. The trading company is going to be, if we do, it's going to be Dunster Food and Wine, known as Cannon's Corner Food and Wine, which is my company, and I'm the director of it.
Very good. There is not an issue regarding a different company. I heard what the gentleman said earlier about it. It's just that there is a gentleman who is a partner, a director of that other company, who is also a director of a company called Galaxy Real Estate, correct?
Yeah.
Do you work as an estate agent, please, for that company in Southall?
Yeah.
And how long have you been working there, please?
Sorry?
How long have you been working there for?
It's been about 2017.
And that was after your GCSEs, according to your online program.
Started there, yeah.
So effectively, you're working full time as an estate agent, as a commercial estate agent.
No. We are working as started as an apprentice, now doing that part time.
So the question is, how much of your time would you be able to allocate to the role of a DPS, please?
Full time. Because I used to like that. Because I'm looking to leave that in real estate now. So we want to come into this business if we get the license granted and help my dad out in this, because we want to open this as a family business. We've been running since about a couple of years, since Wolverhampton, then Camberley, now here. So we want to expand our family business. So I'm looking to go into the family business with my parents.
And are you a director of any other company, please?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Can I just interrupt there, Chair? I mean, this is an application for a premises license, and I would normally interrupt, but I think there are issues of relevance in relation to the questioning, really, issues of relevance which goes to the heart of the licensing objectives and in view of the application itself. Mr. Dan, if I could request that the questioning is relevant and directed to the application in itself, really. I think that would assist the panel.
Thank you. The reason I'm raising this is because of the statement in the Harrow Council's own guidelines that they need to depend on the experience and confidence of whoever manages an off-license as a DPS.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No problem. I'll press on in that case if you don't want me to follow that line of thinking. But I'm sorry, but I appreciate it if Mr. Radwanski could answer then the following questions. Can you clarify what you consider is the role of the DPS, please?
Sorry?
What is the role of the DPS?
It's a designated designated premise supervisor, day-to-day experience on how to handle customers, look after them in sales of alcohol. There's no public nuisance, no crime or disorder, child safety, and public safety.
And you're aware that there is a school within 300 meters from this.
Yes.
Bearing in mind your responsibility as a DPS, can you say why nothing about the school or I'll come to the passageway, the location of the place in a moment, but can you mention why nothing was mentioned about the effect of liquor on children when there's 1,400 children directly opposite that shop?
Well, that's where they're going to come in with the Challenge 25 posters and underage posters. So if anyone looks under the age of 25, we'll definitely ask some IDs.
I'm sorry, I'm specifically talking about school children who collect directly outside that shop and the adjacent shops.
Yeah, but not just an alcohol shop. We are going to be a convenience store as well. So we'll have soft drinks, food, crisps, all that stuff, so they can come and shop from that. But the main alcohol is going to be behind the counter anyway.
Well, I was specifically asking why it wasn't in your operational schedule. That was all.
Okay.
Can we turn to the plan, if that's accepted, Paul, please? You submitted a plan with your application.
Just 1 second, let me just get it out.
Okay.
Just 1 second for him to get the plan out.
Can members see that plan, please?
Sorry? Yeah, we do.
Can members see that plan? Okay. The Home Office says that in cases where premises are used for more than one licensable activity, the area within the premises used for each activity must be shown. On your plan, the licensable area covers the whole shop. And within that plan, you are indicating groceries. Now that means, and we could be rather light-hearted about this, that you'll be selling brandy-covered cornflakes where groceries are shown, but you do show the whole premises as licensable. The big question for me and for others is your drawing shows shelves, but you don't allocate what they're for. So in other words, the drawing, I think, would you accept that drawing is wrong because you've shown everything within the shop to be licensable?
No, I'm going to answer. Sorry, Jim, I can answer.
Right.
I'm sorry.
So as Chair, I'm going to come in here. Can we get clarification on what you intend to put on those shelves? I didn't notice that in the drawing. What do you intend to place in those positions?
There's grocery, then there is grocery in the middle shelves, there's grocery on the sides, the beer and wines are exactly opposite the counter, and there's soft drinks and that, and there's wines on the side.
We left
Shelves,
the part for the shelves because we're in that area as well.
Okay,
Chair,
one person at a time, please.
Yeah.
Could you just clarify what is going to go on the shelves directly adjacent? I believe they were adjacent to the counter.
adjacent to the counter is wines.
Okay.
Shelves, yeah. But those shelves are going to be what? Grocery.
I didn't notice that it wasn't labeled.
Sorry, it's just grocery. The reason we left it as shelves because we want to see what sort of clientele we attract, what ethnicity we attract. So according to that, we can put that side of grocery in as well. Because we want to look after our local neighborhoods.
Those empty shelves are allocated for groceries.
Our business, we can look after them as well as the normal standard groceries as bread, milk and stuff.
So my question again, if I may repeat it, is your drawing, which shows the licensable area totally in red, incorrect? Because
no,
the licensable area includes groceries.
I can answer that, Chairman, for Mr. Godfrey.
No, please. These questions are aimed particularly at the applicant who is going to the DPS. You, with regard, sir, are not to be the DPS.
Sorry, Mr. Godfrey.
Sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Godfrey.
Okay, right. Can we remember to use the hands up function, because there are far too many people speaking at any one time. And I have to say, Mr. Diane, that the applicant does have a representative, and the representative is allowed to speak on behalf of the applicant if he so chooses. But what you are doing now is you are questioning the applicant and the representative. So between them, they will have to decide who is going to answer the questions you put. But can we please use the hand up function, because then we have people talking across each other and at the same time, and that doesn't work. Okay.
Can I answer that?
Mr. Panchal.
Yeah. Ma'am, I'd like to bring to your attention that when we do a drawing plan for any premises that we apply license for, because the alcohol could then be placed anywhere in the premises, if required, so it will breach the condition of the license or the licensing act if somebody walked with the bottle of alcohol on the end of the square. So hence that is why we have to put down the licensable activity marked in the premises where licensable activity takes place. So the licensable activity will take place all over the premises, whether you go to Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Asda's, the drawing is always done in similar manner. But having said that, this committee can come up and say alcohol will not be more than 20% of the premises or 30% of the premises. That is up to the committee to decide. But we have to put down the licensable activity, because alcohol will be stored in the store, can be brought out, and if the alcohol is kept in any other shelves left, it will be breaching. Hence, that is why Ash will be able to answer that correctly.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Panchal. I'm going to go to Councillor Henson, and then I'll go back to Mr. Diane. Councillor Henson.
Sorry, I've just got one quick question. Has your client ever run a shop before?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, he has.
Since 2017.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Henson. Mr. Diane?
Thank you for that, Chair. I've only got a limited time, and I will be very much briefer now, and perhaps get a swifter response from the applicant himself. There are environmental issues in the business which are bound to happen with boxes, crates, as things of that nature.
Let me ask
there is nothing on the plan. There is nothing on the plan.
Yeah, go on. What is it?
Right, just a reminder to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. Thank you.
There is nothing on the plan to say where items will be stored in terms of waste management. The council has licensing objectives to prevent public nuisance from There is nothing on the plan to say where any items of debris and waste will be put. Can you explain that, please?
Okay, Mr. Panchal. So we've spoken previously about you sort of providing an extra bin out the front.
Yes, ma'am.
Just clarify for us what happens to your waste in terms of where you store them on the premises or outside the premises.
Yeah, ma'am, I've just explained to you when Mr. Godfrey was not online, either whether he heard or not. But we mentioned, if you look at the page on page 34, there is 2 bins behind in the yard. And we also mentioned to you that there will be a bin in front of the shop. Now, when you say waste department, when the boxes are removed out, the boxes are smashed up and then put into the bins. So there will be there is a contract with the BIFA waste collection.
Thank you, Mr. Panchal. Councillor Rabadi, I'll come back to you, Mr. Dayan.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, no, my only observation was that just being mindful of the fact that some of the questions are not for the committee's consideration being asked by Mr. Godfrey, which I appreciate. And I think we also need to be mindful that we will have extensive conditions, and then Mr. Godfrey should rest assured that not only that the conditions being considered, which have been put forward by the police, but as good citizens and residents, they will still have an opportunity to report anything if that was possible. So it's just being mindful that the questions are focused, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rabadia. We are duty bound to hear Mr. Dinan as an objector. We as councillors will withdraw to consider and decide what the outcome of this meeting is. So I don't think it's appropriate at this point to say that is not entitled to make certain points. Mr. Dayan, you had your hand up earlier on.
It was a follow-up, a corollary to that point that was made regarding waste management. The shop is now fully fitted out, I believe, and is ready for trading. Is that correct, please? And could the applicant himself please answer that, as he's probably been there?
Ma'am, I can answer that. There is no need for the applicant to answer that because I have got the full knowledge about this. So I'm representing the applicant here. So I'm sorry to say to Mr. Godfrey that I can answer that question. A shop can be fully ready. A shop can trade without any licensable activity. If, for example, if today the committee decides not to grant the license, Mr. Rajwansi can still open the shop, sell groceries, and sell anything that is non-licensable. So he could sell groceries, he could sell cigarettes, and he could operate his shop. There is no way of anybody stopping him to do that.
Even currently, the board's not even up yet. The signboard is not.
The signboard is not put up yet. But having said that, I've answered the question, ma'am, that he is allowed to trade. It does not mean that he's going to sell alcohol.
Okay.
So, thank you. Can I please respond to that? I'm sorry. Can I just pick that up? The question was, is the shop now ready for trading? And I will have to accept from that it is. If it ready for trading? I'm sorry. Could he please stay in the image, please?
He's there. There's no need for him to be in the image, Mr. Godfrey. He is present here in the room, and I'm answering the question. I'm sorry, ma'am. Ma'am, this is getting
right. Okay.
The reason I'm asking,
Mr. Panchal,
the reason I'm asking is because I need to know if it's ready for trading. And
I've just answered that question that Mr. Rajwansi can open the shop tomorrow when it is ready.
Right. Mr. Panchal, if we are going to continue this to its conclusion, you are reminded that you need to follow the rules. I cannot have two people talking at the same time. I gave you an opportunity to speak, so can you allow Mr. Dayan to speak? Yeah, and you know that is the way that we do it. I will give you your opportunity to speak as well, but not at the same time.
Thank you, Chair. What I was going to say is if the shop is ready and the waste management is under the control now of the gentleman who may be granted DPS status, I'm going to show a picture of what was taken an hour and a half ago. Do you recognise the back of this property, please, Mr. Rajwansi?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Where is that, please?
Sorry, the rear yard of the shop.
It's the rear yard of the shop.
The fit out's taking place.
Is that how waste is going to be managed in future, please?
No, because
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Thank you. Right. So, in terms of the management of the waste, I think Mr. Panchal, you said that there were bins available previously to deal with that. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Sorry, ma'am, I did mention to you, and I did mention, and I'm very clearly mentioning to you that shop is being ready. Like Mr. Dan is just asking, is the shop ready to operate? The shop hasn't operated, but the shop can operate if it wants to, once everything is cleared and everything is put into place. If even the license wasn't granted, then the licensable activities wouldn't take place, but the shop could trade as a grocery shop and would trade with cigarettes and that when it is ready. But it is very soon going to be ready to trade.
Right, okay, but not yet ready.
May I also bring to your notice
at the point that you will be ready to trade, the bins will be there and they will be used to dispose of your. Thank you. Right. So,
sorry, ma'am. I'd like to also bring to your attention, because Mr. Godfrey's brought that picture. My client has just said to me, the flat above is also being refurbished. Yes. So that rubbish that you see down that Mr. Dan is showing you is from the flat above, which is being refurbished.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Rabadia. Is that a legacy hand?
Yeah, sorry, my hand was up. So I was just saying, are we allowed to ask questions of Mr. Godfrey, though?
Yes. So I'm going to ask. So Mr. Godfrey has
Mr. Diane.
Yeah. Mr. Diane had asked questions of the applicant. So I'm going to ask Mr. Diane if he would like to present his case. Or alternatively, wait to make a concluding statement. So is there anything further you'd like to present, Mr. Dine, before I ask questions or get the panel to ask questions of you?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for raising these points. I've only got two very brief points now. One is in connection with the history of this shop as an off-license, where those of us who live nearby have experienced drunken activity in the passageway immediately adjacent to the shop. My impression is that the applicant has not researched the background to this shop, because that passageway, which is shown in the image attached to his application, had a gate attached to stop people urinating and defecating after they've been into the off-license. We are concerned that no attempt has been made to identify this at all. We know that residents above the shops were constantly pestered by this public nuisance. I would like to know if the applicant has any comment on how he would deal with what is immediately adjacent to this shop in future, should that awful circumstance arise yet again to spoil our neighbourhood.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Diane. So earlier on, we discussed the fact that the applicant was going to install CCTV. I think just on the outside of the shop. We addressed the issue of antisocial behaviour along the alleyways, and there was a commitment to install CCTV to cover the back. In terms of waste from empty cans and bottles and so on, I'm not sure if you heard this, Mr. Dine, but there was a commitment to clear the area in the mornings and I think any time during the days. But I'm going to hand over now to Mr. Panchal and his applicant to see whether or not he wants to add anything further to that. So Mr. Diane's question was stopping antisocial behaviour in that entranceway.
Yeah, ma'am, I stressed, I do apologize, Mr. Godfrey wasn't there.
Mr. Diane, please, Mr. Diane.
Mr. Diane, sorry, Mr. Diane, I call you Mr. Diane, sorry, because okay. Ma'am, we've addressed majority of the presentation earlier in my presentation to say how well the 4 licensing objectives are going to be promoted. Mr. Diane must understand that my client has understood the background of the premises. He hasn't jumped into the premises by not knowing the background of the premises. Hence, he has already agreed, and in my presentation, I had made it absolutely clear to you, having had this conversation with the client, that if he finds any drunken people or drink people around, he will make sure no alcohol is going to be served to them. That's one thing. He's also going to be making sure that no single cans of alcohol will be sold, which is another problem with the drinks around. He's also agreed now not to sell above 6.5%, which Mr. Waghela is saying, which is again, anything above 6.5% is a popular drinks that these street drinkers are normally coming. So those precautions have already been taken. I've also mentioned in my presentation that there will be a CCTV installed at the back of the premises to avoid any matters arising, and working along with the responsible authority is very, very important. So all those matters have been put in place. Extra bin has been brought up in the front. My client is going to make sure the front part of the premises is going to be kept clean. And may I just make it very clear that my client is and wants the same community that is objecting to the application to come and use the shop in a manner that they are able to use it properly, rather than being away from it. We would like them to come up. So we're going to cooperate with Mr. Diane. We're going to be looking after Mr. Diane. That is what my client is going to be looking after. He wants Mr. Diane to come in, to shop. He wants to make friends with Mr. Diane. He doesn't want to make enemies with Mr. Diane. So he's going to make all his efforts, because that efforts is going to make sure that his business is successful. Without that efforts, his business is not going to be successful. So he's not going to be creating any matters from there. So it's very important for the committee to make note that that is the initial stage, and that is what my client wishes to bring forward to it.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Panchal. If there are no further questions from the panel, I'm going to ask first Mr. Diane to make a concluding statement, followed by the applicant. It's just the concluding statement.
Thank you, Chair. By this application, Mr. Rajwanski, and what has happened this evening at this panel hearing, has shown little merit to give confidence in him that we will have a well-managed off-license, nor that there will be a high quality of experienced management required by the council to address any of the 4 criteria set out in the legislation, particularly on antisocial behaviour, health and safety issues. The fact that Mr. Rajwanski is currently not even visible to face the questions and has to rely on somebody who will not be the DPS is seriously troubling. The panel has the right, I understand, to reject a DPS and the grant of a personal licence. And before I go, may I thank you so much for your patience in hearing what I have to say and for accepting me at such a late time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Diane. Concluding statements now from Mr. Panchal and the applicant.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't have much to say. All I can say is we have already mentioned to you in my initial presentation under section guidance 182 on 2.1 to 2.32, and I've also mentioned about 9.43. I'm also mentioning to you to say 14.19, which I've been looking at all the representations, which are again on the need, but I'm sure you're going to look after that. We are here today in making sure, and we are making sure that Mr. Rajwanshi is going to be looking after the 4 licensing objectives robustly. We have seen today, ma'am, that my client is fully cooperative with this committee today in accepting the 2 license single can matter. We're also accepting this committee's recommendations to you regarding an extra CCTV laid out at the back. We're also making sure that we're not going to sell alcohol above 6.5, which was not in the initial application that I realized. So we are doing a complete cooperation with it. And we're going to make sure that we do make sure that we would like to build that gap that has created between us and Mr. Dayan today. And we do apologize to Mr. Dayan if he has felt the other way around, but we want Mr. Dayan to come into that shop. We want to build that gap with him and say, look, let's forget the gap and let's work together. And that's what we want to do. And that's what we are here to achieve today. Okay. And we want to make sure that the Harrow Borough Council is going to feel proud of approving such an application to make sure the shop has brought some light in the borough. That is the aim of my client. And it will, if such an aim can only be achieved, and that achievement can then bring in the profit to my client. So he has to look at every angle and balance it up. So I think it's proportionate for this license to be granted. Then you have a choice. If you grant the license today, and if there is a problem with my client, he will be coming up in front of you again, which Mr. Dayan can bring him along, and he can then lose the license. So he has 2 chances to make sure to prove to you that yes, I am a very reasonable, and he has done that since 2017. So ma'am, I feel that the license be granted.
Okay, right. Thank you, Mr. Panchal. At this point, I believe we withdraw with all legal officer before announcing the next stage. So, Nikesh, you will need to put us in a separate room.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry, Nikesh. Before you go, ma'am, are we going to come wait for decision 5 days, or do you want us to wait for you to come back?
Mr. Igbiniyetu, because ordinarily we consider, we conclude, and then we tell you what we're going to do after that.
Yes. I mean, if the panel feel they can come to a conclusion and sort of make an oral or give an oral indication, followed up.
If I may interrupt, sorry. Yeah. The normal process, Chair, is that the council will retire and make a decision, and you will inform all parties within 5 working days.
But, thank you. But the rest of, once we do that, at this point, everyone else can leave the meeting once we agree to do that.
That's correct. Yes.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we will, committee will withdraw to make a decision. You will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. So at this point, I will say thank you all for your contribution. It is now 8:19. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.